the river is, for us, central to everything that we do. It's like the vein that runs through all of what we do in our valley.
The river itself is really a living being. You know, it's something that's part of you, part of the traditions and part of your life, and it is really considered a relative.
The river is really, again, it's the center of, kind of the center of our world. It's like our umbilical cord to the earth. It's what keeps us alive and feeds us.
We're dependent on the river. It's our substance, it's our livelihood, it's our culture, and it's a part of our daily life. And it's how we see ourselves.
So it's a continuous battle for the tribe to make sure we protect our habitat, and it's a fight because you're fighting federal and state people, and I'm concerned because I'm a kind of a sort of an environmentalist in a way that, protect the habitat, and because it's our main source, and we're connected to the river. We're a river tribe.
It's all around us. It's the trees, it's the water, it's the fish, it's the deer, this is our home, this is our land. This is, we're Indian people, we believe in these things, we have these values, and it does mean something, and it is important. And we do have something to say about it, and we can do something about it.
This is an issue that goes to the very core of who we are, and we have all been raised here. Our kids are being raised here. We want to leave them something to protect too. We have a responsibility to this place.
Well, between the two rivers, I go back to a time before the dams were put in, and those are my most vivid memories, was the rivers when they were in their natural form, I guess. And the Klamath River actually always scared me because it was so big. Before the dams went in, it was just a huge, huge river to me. That I was actually afraid to swim in it when we went down there. It was so big. Here, we were real perfectly adapted. The Hupas are perfectly adapted to the Trinity River here in the valley. And so during the summertime, which they wouldn't do today, but the parents would just dump us off at the river, and we'd stay there all day long. And we just lived in the river. And so the memories I have of the river back then, when it was in this natural state, was just, I guess the only word I can really say is awesome. The salmon would come up in large schools, and you could you can see the river just turn black because the top of the salmon, was dark.
I remember participating in with, they would surround the fish with a seine net and then draw out then in the net, and there would be a lot of salmon. There are a lot more salmon than there is now. I mean, story goes that you could almost walk across the river on the backs of salmon in those days.
Growing up, my dad was a traditional fisherman, and we would spend fishing season down at Ishipishi Falls, and those were my earliest memories, and going to ceremonies down at Karimeen. And during that time, that's when there was a lot of fish. Mm-hmm. So those are really fond memories of spending time with my family.
You know, I have very clear memories of the ceremonies that we do at the river. We do boat dances there, and I could recall just about every single one that I can remember from being from very little, and seeing people in boats, like in canoes, traditional canoes floating down the river, and hearing like the men sing as they're coming down the river, and the way that it kind of felt like almost like the river was like agreeing with us, like whatever day it was. And I really clearly remember like running alongside of the boats and jumping over like rocks and through like bushes and just trying to like keep up with what everybody was doing.
When I was a kid, the water didn't get bright green like it does now during low flows from the toxic algae blooms. Those weren't in the river when I was a kid, and so as we've gotten older and as the dams have sort of choked off the river more, and there's been less flow, it definitely has changed how the river looks, smells, how the fish taste, and we still utilize the river because that's what we do, and we can't stop doing that. We still eat the fish, we still have our ceremonies, but now you just have to be in fear that your kids are going to get sick from it, or you can't ingest the water, during those times of the year. And we see our fish sick too, So yeah, it's definitely gotten worse as I've gotten older.
I don't remember being little, and maybe it's because nobody told me about it, but I don't remember being little and having to sort of request water to be able to do the ceremonies. Because now I know that we have to request that they let water down in order to have enough water in the river to do the ceremonies, because otherwise the boats will scrape bottom. And I don't remember that when I was little. So it was interesting to see the way that people now react to the river being higher and being like bigger, and older people talking about how it looks like the way it used to versus the way that it looks sort of now because we have less water. So I think that people become more like sentient and aware of what the river means to them when they start to see these ways that people have been manipulating it. Mm-hmm. So then when we're at these ceremonies, people kind of go, oh yeah, see, this is what it used to be like. It would be deeper, or there would be more water, or, oh, see, you can tell the difference in color and that sort of thing. So there's definite kinds of like those adaptations and changes that have happened since I was little.
Growing up as a kid around here, hunting and fishing for ceremonies and for family sustenance. You notice things like, for many years I used to go out and go eeling. When the eels were running, we'd always be eeling. When the salmon were running, we're fishing. Different runs of fish you're fishing for, and over the years you notice that we're only fishing for eels at one time of the year now, as opposed to 3 times, different times of the year previously, and you're not catching as many as you used to. It wasn't uncommon to catch maybe 300-400 a night, and nowadays that's unheard of.
And I think it's really hard, excuse me, to describe actually my feeling about the river, and I think that elders have the same feeling if they go back before the time when the dams had come in, and the experience they had with the river. It was a real personal thing. it was part of your life. And I can remember when I left to go in the Army in the 60s. This was just after they put the dam in up here on the Trinity River. So it hadn't had a real effect on the river yet. So I went away to the Army, and then after the Army I went to college. And when I came back in the early 70s, the dams were having to have a big effect on the river. And when I saw that river, the Trinity River, the state it was in, from what I remembered before, so alive and just beautiful, it was a sad thing to see. And I remember when I first saw the river, when I basically drove in the valley and looked down and saw the river in that state, it gave me the same feeling of when my grandfather was dying. It had the same feeling that I was losing something, really something valuable. And I think that a lot of people feel that way, that it's a relative, basically, you know. That's the attachment you have to that river.
I remember getting that phone call, and it's a very, I want to compare it to turning on the TV for the 911 incident. You know, that shocking, like, is this really happening, or am I really hearing this? And also, I would think more recently that the impression that had on my family, it might have been like getting the phone call that there was a shooting at the elementary school. And I don't mean in any way to belittle what has recently happened in American history, but instead to communicate that this is what it means to us, that it was a significant event, and that it was like my relation, and that there was descriptions and phone calls of the salmon floating on top of the river, and the smell and the fear of what does this mean to our future, and what does this mean to the rest of all of life that is dependent on these rivers, both the Klamath and Trinity.
My grandfather was a fisherman. He was very into salmon too, because he just grew up. He was like the best salmon cook, actually. Everybody used to say that. He was really, really good at barbecue salmon. And I remember him talking about how it's very, not damning, but like scary to see all of these dead fish, because it's not just because, you know, it's a sad thing because there's like all of this dead fish and you feel bad, but because for him, and for I think a lot of people in that area, those are like relatives. They're close to you, and you know, you don't go out and fish because you want to get the biggest fish so you can hang it on your wall and tell everybody you caught a big fish. Like, you go out and fish because it's your responsibility to sort of maintain that balance, because you're interconnected with that fish, right? Because it becomes a part of you and it takes care of you from the inside. So to see all of that, I think it felt like, what does that really mean for where we're at in terms of the balance of our people and our system? And
I was here for the fish kill. I was visiting at our ceremonies at the jump dance, and you know, we just finished up, and the next day we're feeling good, and then we went for a boat ride and just started seeing all these dead fish floating. You know, I think that's when people really realized how sick the river was, you know, if the fish could die off like that, and how bad it was for them. I don't think we thought about it much until then.
And I think you had to have this sort of, you know, this kind of horrific event. It just sort of laid bare what the problems were here in the Klamath. And I think people were so hurt and angry and determined to never let this happen again, that they were seeking a solution. And so I think the fish kill, along with the license expiration, those things came about the same time, and I think that catalyzed the momentum to push for dam removal.
You know, we built a fire and we sat around the fire and we drank a couple beers and we talked about it, and realized that that we all had something in common, that we were all just people without titles, because you know, we were just people who felt the need to do something. Not the Karuk tribe, not the Yurok tribe, not the Hupa tribe, not any tribe, but people, individuals.
You know, when we first started, it was just a bold, visionary idea that we could actually pull off what would be the biggest dam removal in U.S. history here on the Klamath. So the effort started with a lot of grassroots organizing and a lot of, it was campaigning that was everything from writing letters to decision makers to actually showing up and protesting the company that owns the dams. When we first started, the parent company of Pacificor was Scottish Power, headquartered in Scotland. So 3 times we went to and crashed the shareholders meeting of Scottish Power in Scotland, and took, every time we'd go, we'd take 20 to 30 tribal members from the area back.
We went to Scotland, and it was the first time that we had ever been somewhere where we were actually received well. Up until that point, we had been protesting the BOR, we had been going to Sacramento. We had never had anybody sort of say, yeah, we want to hear your story. And when we went to Scotland, that's what we got. And it was like, it was shocking actually, but it was great, and the shareholders cared about what was going on. And we saw an immediate reaction from the company. They sold the company. They sold the dams. They sold the dams to Warren Buffett's Mid-American. And so the next year we loaded up and we went to Omaha to their shareholders meeting.
So then we spent the next 3 years going to Warren Buffett shareholders meeting and sort of crashing that party. At the same time, we were doing this direct action and this media intensive effort. The Karuk and the other tribes involved were also creating a scientific record where we were showing through scientific investigations that these dams have devastating impacts to fish runs, have devastating impacts to water quality. Then the third prong was litigation. We were also suing Pacificor and suing agencies for failing to uphold existing environmental laws. So between the grassroots action, the science, and the litigation, all that put a lot of pressure on Pacificor and the agencies to seek a resolution to the problem. That resolution grew into the Klamath agreements that were signed in 2010.
It quickly evolved into more than I had ever imagined, and it's very empowering. And seeing, taking a high school dropout from Orleans who was 16 years old and is staggering down the road, most days, put that person on an airplane and fly to Scotland, and to see that person who is just a river person, who doesn't have any really formal education, who had nowhere to go, nothing to look forward to, had no dreams, to see that person in Scotland or Omaha, Nebraska, or Sacramento or Portland, standing up, whether they're carrying a sign or dropping a banner off a bridge or cooking salmon on sticks in a park somewhere, and being who they are and not being ashamed about it, and shouting it to the treetops and to the rest of the world This is who I am. This is where I come from, and this is what's important to me and to my family and to my people. To see that sort of, now that's activism, and that's grassroots. And it takes a little bit to sort of ignite the spark, and then it takes some momentum and a little bit of resources here and there. And you know, it's that sort of activism that can change the world and really make real things happen, in my opinion.
So we started putting these components together, and we come up with something that we felt like gave us enough water for the fishery to be restored. If we remove dams, restore habitat, and have the flows in the KBRA, we feel confident that this fishery is going to recover. The farmers feel confident that if they have the irrigation deliveries described by the KBRA and some assistance with their power rates, they can have a viable and successful farming businesses. So it took several years to negotiate that agreement, and it's controversial. I mean, there's people in the farm community that feels like it gives too much water to the fish and to the tribes, and there's people on the tribal side who feels like it surrenders too much water to the irrigators. So what I think we have is what I call the radical center for the Klamath, because in the Klamath Basin there's nothing radical about being on the fringe. You know, people are hardcore to the political left or hardcore to the political right, but what we haven't had in the Klamath are people who are willing to come together in the middle and try to find real solutions.
You know, anytime that you're telling an Indian, sign away your right to something, or sign this and it's going to change this for you, and down the road it's going to change this for you and for your kids. I mean, we're naturally wary of that, because of, you know, damage that's been done in the past, and historically it's not worked out for us to sign treaties.
What's wrong with the KBRA is that it allocates and locks in water to the irrigators. And it even goes as far as to say, we're going to terminate your senior water rights so that the United States will defend the right for these irrigators to have that water, even if the fish need it.
It's not, you don't need it in order to be able to claim rights to the water. And that in actuality, the rights to the water belong to the indigenous peoples first. So the agreement is sort of, while it is in a way restating those rights, what it really is doing is also stating the rights of these other people, like other sort of agencies and people and groups. And so it is in effect taking away the power of those initial rights from Indian people. And so I think it's problematic. Do I see some of the reasons why tribes wanted to agree to it and wanted to move forward with it? Yes, I definitely do, because we live in a society where everything is complicated. But at the same time, I think I'm still young and idealistic, and I think, why can't we fight those fights? Why can't we try to push it a little bit, like push that envelope enough that we're challenging people to think about things in a different way?
Well, there's issues with water rights, and are we giving up our rights? And like I said, I don't feel like we have any rights to begin with. To me, the KBRA is kind of empty. It's like, okay, well, this may be the fastest way to dam removal, and whatever words are written in it don't necessarily mean anything, you know. And I think a lot of people feel differently. They feel like it's holding us to these stipulations that we're going to give up our rights, and so that's where some of us are divided. I'm not sure, you know. And I think that's the worst problem with it, is that it's dividing the people, you know, divide and conquer. And I mean, it does a lot of good things for some people. I mean, it'll give us, more water than we've had before, better flows than we've ever had before. And I think everybody involved has taken a compromise, and they're not all completely happy. Not everybody's completely happy with it, which that's what you get when you compromise and come to an agreement.
I think clean water and healthy fisheries is politically agnostic. I mean, that's something everybody needs.
I'm not really worried about the future and people blowing each other up, nations going to war and stuff. What I'm afraid of is what the Earth might do to us, the planet itself, because it's one big organism. And the things that mankind is doing to the Earth, the planet, is we may have to pay for that.
I think there's this whole process of healing that's trying to happen on this river, and we want to fight for our river, but we also need to be mindful and take care of ourselves as well. We have to remember to do that. That's important, and to see that the people are healthy.
The lessons, I think, of activism is a human story that involves all humans, and all of us have a responsibility to this planet that we live on. Your survival is dependent on the survival of others as well, and so and people can make a difference, and they do.
Say it to your assemblymen, say it to your senators, say it to your Congress. We want the river clean. We want the dams down. And that's what we live for, that's what we fight for. And nothing that we do has harm for anybody. We're just trying to protect the environment.